Hello, everyone! Welcome to my latest documentary with Julien Looks Under Things. This time, I'm going to show you the maple forest of the Laurentian Mountains. Now, it's hard to believe that right now I'm walking in a maple forest, and you're right, I'm not. I'm in Iceland, in front of Mount Esja. Why did I not film? Well, I forgot. So I was in the Outaouais region of Quebec for work from the spring, summer, and fall of 2023 alongside my partner Nicole, and I saw a lot of critters. So just some background on what is l'Outaouais and the Laurentides. So, there's a plane right there. So, yeah, I was there for a good while. Now, what is the Outaouais and the Laurentians? So l'Outaouais is one of the administrative regions of Quebec. It is north of the Ottawa River. Both are named so after the Outaouais people, which is one of the First Nations groups in the region. And the Laurentian Mountains is a mountain range close or south of the Canadian Shield. Both of those mountain ranges are extremely old, over 1 billion years, which is much older than Mount Esja over there. The mountains and rocks of Iceland are at the oldest 64 million years because they are extrusive. They're made of extrusive igneous rock, so lava. Dried up lava. While the Laurentians and the Canadian Shields are intrusive igneous rock, so magma that has solidified billions of years ago. Yeah, so it's quite something. It's quite interesting. The Laurentians specifically are very special because they are a temperate forest. So mixed forest, most of the trees you'll see are maple trees, hickories, and oaks. So the area is very humid, meaning you will see a huge biodiversity. The amount of bugs I've seen is comparable to Australia. I also saw a lot of amphibians. In l'Outaouais, I saw the green frog and the bullfrog. I'm still unsure how to differentiate the two. I know that the green frog goes and the bullfrog goes. So it's the males who do that during the mating season, kind of like birds, is to impress the females. And the males can be quite violent about that too. They start by doing those sounds, and then they will start to fight. They kind of wrestle. Apparently they try to pin the other one under the water, so quite interesting frogs. Yeah. We also get the toads. Those frogs have a lot of predators. Like the turtles, they'll have a lot of babies. Start off as tadpoles, and then they are very, very, very tiny. With toads especially, toadlets are like the size of my nail. They're very vulnerable to predators, and then they become almost the size of my fist. So, very, very big, very big dudes. Frogs, even leopard frogs, get quite big. They're quite good at defending themselves, though. So frogs, they can just jump very quickly, while toads will produce toxin, and they can also blow up themselves with air. I saw one almost get eaten by a snake, but it did manage to get away. Very cool. Oh yeah, I'm gonna go back inside to talk about the insects and the other invertebrates, because there's a lot of them, and it's a bit cold here. So let's now go with insects. And yeah, there was a lot of insects where I was in the Outaouais, or the Laurentian Mountains, specifically because, it is hot, it is humid. Bugs, they love that. So let's talk about the ones that I've seen. So first we'll start with the beetles, because, beetles are the creature that has the most amount of species on Earth. So a quarter of all animal life is composed of beetles. If you want to study something With a lot of species, the beetles are where you want to go. I'll not talk about every single beetle. I don't know every single beetle, but I'll talk about the ones that, well, that have made quite an impression on me. So I have seen the tortoise beetle. So quite an intriguing beetle. I have it's been on my bucket list for a while. What's special about the tortoise beetle is that their elytras, so the what protects the wings, the elytra basically go past the legs, which gives them a tortoise shape. Afterwards, we've got the weevils. Half of all beetle species are weevils. They are the beetles that have a snout. Basically, beetles, what makes them special is that they have crushing mandibles. Weevils, their mandibles are at the end of a snout. It will be used for multiple reasons. A lot of the times it is to dig into plants. They are herbivores. It is to dig into plants to be able to place their eggs. And my favorite weevil is the acorn weevil that has a super long snout and a very funny face. They use that snout, the female uses that snout to dig a hole in acorns to, lay her eggs. And it's really cool because I've been able to look into acorns and find that a bunch of little larvae living in them. Oh, it's so cool because you got an acorn. An acorn is basically its own little universe, and then it turns into a tree. That's amazing. Of course, the acorns that have a larva in there will not turn into a tree, but very cool. Very, very cool. Yeah, they start as little tiny larvae in the acorn. They'll feed in the acorn, and then they will emerge, go into the soil, stay there for a good while, and then, come out as an adult, and the cycle begins anew. I've also seen the twice-stabbed lady beetle, a very beautiful ladybug. It's quite small, and it's, red with 2 red spots. So again, I said that in my previous documentary, there are 6,000 species of ladybug around the world, and the twice-stabbed is one of the native species we have here. Unfortunately, they are hard to find because they are being displaced by invasive ladybugs. So we've got the Asian lady beetle, and actually, apparently, the 7-spotted ladybug is also invasive itself. So the Asian lady beetle is pushing away the 7-spotted, but they're also exotic from Europe. It's a complicated situation because, the 7-spotted and the Asian lady beetles, they are in the niche of the ladybugs. They are doing what we want ladybugs to do, which is eat aphids that attack our plants. Aphids are also pretty interesting animals. I can talk about invasive species in the next segment, which will be about pollinators. Now, when I'm talking about invasive pollinators, I'm talking about the honeybee. So we do love that honeybee. They create honey. We talk a lot about saving the bees, and usually when there's talks about that, it's, the poster child will be the honeybee. But they do displace a lot of our native pollinators, and our native pollinators are actually very good at, pollinating our crops. They're actually even better than honeybees at doing it because, they're here for free. So let's talk about those pollinators that we have. The one I able to film quite well is the sweat bee. So the sweat bee is a solitary bee. There's a lot of solitary bees. That's just the one that I'm able to identify. They're called sweat bees because they apparently like to lick our sweat, but apparently the ones that we've seen that are green in color don't really do it. And it's never happened to me, but they're very cute. Basically, they don't have colonies, they don't produce honey, but they are pollinating a lot of flowers for, their larvae. They are in need of help, so the best way to help them is to make sure to plant native species, so plants that they can find naturally, and to also make sure that where they are is suitable to make nests. I know that bee hotels are quite popular, but that's just a small part of the solution. What they need the most is, they need food. We also get the bumblebee. So bumblebees are they are the colonial insect that can live the most up north. They are very, very well adapted for the cold, so they can fly at lower temperatures. Main reason why they're all fuzzy, and they produce a bit of honey, but only for themselves. So bumblebees, very good at pollinating a lot of flowers, specifically long flowers. They have a very long proboscis, so they can reach deep into flowers. Very, very cute. And next, well, with the pollinators, we have also the butterflies and the moths. So butterflies and moths are also very useful pollinators. They don't pollinate as much as bees because they don't, they don't eat pollen. But butterflies are specialized pollinators. They will pollinate very specific flowers. Some species of butterflies will only pollinate one flower, which makes them very vulnerable. Butterflies pollinate during the day. Moths pollinate at night. Not all moths are pollinators because some of them don't even eat at the adult stage, but they are a very good source of food. I saw a lot of moths where I was. I saw some really interesting ones, like the plume moth that looks like an IUD. And the one that I've spent the most amount of time with was the tussock moth. I don't really know the adult form, but I'm familiar now with the caterpillar. Caterpillars are full of proteins because they have to eat so much before to metamorphosize in the adult stage. And, well, because a lot of creatures want to eat them, they have to defend themselves, and some will do that with stinging hairs. Specifically in Canada, it will be the tussock moth. There was a lot of them in Australia. I did not touch them, but I did accidentally touch a tussock moth caterpillar. It fell in my neck, and it's not my fault. If you do get stung by a tussock moth caterpillar, what do? First, you have to wash the area and then get some tape to basically unstick the hairs of your skin. And then afterwards, take some antihistamine. Their hairs go into your skin and cause basically cause an allergic reaction. It is I'm kind of annoyed that I've managed to go through all of Australia without getting bitten by anything or stung by anything, and it's in Quebec that it happens. Now, speaking of other creatures to watch out in North America, we got the true bugs. There are carnivorous and herbivorous true bugs. They're the bugs that have a proboscis, so they stab their food to suck it up, and they have leathery wings and a nymph stage. So the ones I've seen, the carnivorous bugs in Quebec, specifically the assassin and the ambush bugs. They will catch their prey with mantis-like arms, pierce their prey with a proboscis, inject liquefying enzymes and suck out the insides. Yeah, be careful about the assassin bug. They can hurt you as well, and apparently there is a species of assassin bug that can deliver a virus to you. I think it's the Chaga virus or something. Very dangerous, but very fascinating creatures. Very cool, very good hunters. Other true bugs I've seen, well, there is the shield bug, who is a vegetarian, and the aphids, who are also vegetarian. And I've seen a lot of leaf hoppers. So leaf hoppers are really cool. They look a lot like cicadas, also true bugs. I haven't really been able to film them. Leaf hoppers are just very tiny, and they're very well known for just how fast they can jump. Some, I don't think they're the leaf hoppers, but they're able to hide very well, and they have an interesting shape, and I hope to learn more about them. That was a little bit of the bugs I've seen. Now we'll talk about the other arthropods, so the other animals with an exoskeleton. So with the other arthropods that I've seen, we've got, well, the myriapods and the arachnids. So myriapods is the group that contains the centipedes and millipedes. The way you can distinguish millipedes from centipedes is that centipedes have one pair of legs per segment of their body, and they are carnivores, while the millipedes have 2 legs per segment of their body, and they are mostly scavengers. I don't really know a lot about myriapods because, yeah, I just don't. It was just kind of fun to film them with my new camera because when the millipedes move, they really synchronize their legs, so it could really capture those details. So that was quite fun. Now, with the arachnids, you have, of course, the spiders. I haven't been able to really film noteworthy spiders here compared to Australia. I did, however, get really close to a jumping spider, which made me really happy. It's quite hard to do because, again, their vision is extremely good and they know that we are living beings. I have been able to get close as well to a crab spider who hunt on flowers and they camouflage to be the color of flowers to hunt pollinators. Now, I have seen other types of arachnids. I've seen a few mites, so some velvet mites, quite quite interesting. I don't have a lot of information on them, except that they are very small and very cute. But what I do have information on is the daddy longlegs. So the daddy longlegs are part of the group called the Opilione. Now, they're not the only creature that is called the daddy longleg. The Cellar spider, which has long legs and can be found in Australia, is also called the daddy longlegs. But when I'm talking about daddy longlegs here, I mean the Opilione, who are also known as granddaddy longlegs and harvestmen. They use that name quite well because they are scavengers. They are omnivores, so they can hunt, but not very well. First, their chelicerae are not very big, and they don't really have venom. And they also don't have a good eyesight. While spiders have, well, up to 8 eyes, daddy longlegs only have 2, and they're very small. Every time I see their eyes, I laugh. It's so funny. But still very interesting creatures. They're not spiders because their body parts is fused into only one segment, and that's the main reason. They have a lot of legs. Apparently when they eat, they don't really suck their food like a spider. They sort of eat it whole, and apparently it makes it so they are very vulnerable to parasites and other things. It's interesting with daddy longlegs because there's quite a bit that is known about them, but at the same time, not. They have been quite overlooked by science, and it's a shame because, again, I've seen them perform interesting behavior like fighting. That was just really, really interesting. The other invertebrates I've seen were the gastropods, so the snails and the slugs. So gastropod means stomach in foot, and yeah, snails and slugs are like that. They have their foot, which they slide on, and a lot of their organs are in there. The difference between snails and slugs will be the shell, and I found out some really interesting things about that. I actually discovered that in Australia. So the snails are actually the ancestral form. They are older, and slugs evolve multiple times. There's not just one lineage of slug. So that's why in Australia I have found a half slug. Half slug, yeah. So you can see the transitional forms sometimes. It's quite interesting. So yeah, snails are losing their shell. Yeah, this type of evolution is convergent evolution when the same type of shape happens multiple times. So same thing with crabs, they've evolved multiple times. Worms evolve multiple times too. It's quite interesting. There's a lot we can talk about. Other things about snails and slugs, well, they eat, they are mostly either herbivores or scavengers. There are some predators in the ocean and stuff like that. So the way they eat is with the radula. So the radula is like a tongue that has teeth on it. And I just love being able to film that. Snails and slugs on land are hermaphroditic. And I have been able to film their reproduction in Manitoba, which is probably my best video ever. And in the ocean, they do have separate sexes. Not all of them. Nature is quite interesting like that, where every time you think there's a trend, there's always gonna be some outliers, which is it always makes studying nature more fun. Another thing with snails and slugs, they are very slow, so they are very prone to parasitism. So a lot of things can parasitize them. That's why you should never, ever, ever eat a snail or slug raw, because you can actually die from that. But yeah, that was the snails and the slugs, and I'll talk a little bit more about parasitism. Now, we're actually going to move away from animals and go towards plants and fungi, because I saw a actual parasite during my time in Outaouais, and that was the ghost pipe. So the ghost pipe looks like a mushroom, but it's actually a plant that has lost all of its chlorophyll. And the reason is because, well, it does not use photosynthesis anymore. What it does actually is get all its nutrients from fungi. So fungi, also a very interesting thing about them is that they are more closely related to animals than plants, because, well, they have to basically consume their own food instead of using photosynthesis. And they actually formed a symbiosis with plants. So plants and fungi kind of have a deal going on where fungi will take energy from a plant, and in return they will provide specific nutrients like nitrogen and stuff to the plant. But the ghost pipe decides to not play that way and only take. They apparently do have some medicinal properties, but I don't really know about them. And then, speaking of fungi and things that are not quite what they are, I did find some slime mold. Don't know what kind of slime mold. Slime molds are very interesting. They are kind of like mushrooms, but not really. Some of them are actually colonies of amoebas. Amoebas are protists, and protists are single-celled organisms that have nuclei, so their DNA is protected by a nucleus. Their cells are like ours, but they live alone. But those amoebas decide to work together, and they form some weird structures. I still don't know much about slime mold, but it was just really, really, really cool to find some. So, yeah, I encourage you all to find out more about the world that we inhabit. Now, you've probably noticed that I've mentioned a lot in passing or directly the stuff I've seen in Australia, and it seems like this video has a lot more creatures than Australia. There is some explanation with that. So what's going on is that when you are in a temperate region, or even if you go a little bit in the Arctic, where I am right, well, not the Arctic, but the tundra, in those regions where there's very defined seasons, a very defined winter, there's going to be, well, less animals because it's harder to live there. However, what happens is that the summers will be very, very productive because everything needs to, well, basically reproduce, be born, and everything like that as quickly as possible. Oh, there's the other plane. Woo! Even here in the tundra right now, it's very quiet, but apparently when I come back here during the summer... Look, everyone's dancing! So, in the Laurentian forest, there's a good mix of having a very fertile area, very humid, lots of creatures can live there, but also there's the winter. So yeah, life will be happening very quickly. Compared to in the tropics, it can be a little bit slower. The amount of diversity will be quite stable. Now, what are the consequences? Well, is that with the tropics, a lot of those creatures have a smaller population, meaning it's much more fragile. It's very, there's less members of those specific species, so they are much more at risk of extinction. Those environments are very fragile. But if you go up north here with the winters, so they have a larger population, it's much easier for those environments to spring back from destruction, specifically the temperate forest. What's happening with the tundra and the temperate forest is that they are becoming very vulnerable because of climate change. So they rely on specific environmental changes. Cold winter, hot summers, each animal, plant, and everything like that is adapted to live through that. Now with climate change, it is destabilizing that cycle, especially where I was in Outaouais. Now there's much more longer periods of extreme rain or extreme heat and extreme dryness. That extreme dryness makes the soil much harder, and makes it much harder for the soil to absorb water. And those rains, well, they will cause natural disasters. When I was there was 5 tornado warnings. So yeah, pretty scary. Here in Iceland, the climate change is causing the area to be drier. Ooh, there's the plane. Can I get the plane? There it is. It's making the area drier, less rain, less snowfall, making the land more susceptible to be eroded when wind blows through it. Okay, so it just sweeps everything. Most of the plant life will be moss. Yeah, if it dries up and they're swept away, it will take years for them to grow back. So yeah, it's important to stay alert with what's happening in the environment. Afterwards, of course, it is taking action. And a thing to remember, every action that is for progress, for social progress, environmental progress, it all works together. So you don't have to feel like you need to pick a specific thing. If you are helping in some way, somewhere, you are helping everyone. Everyone is basically helping each other. That's a very important thing to remember. So yeah, that was my documentary about the Laurentian mountain maple forests. I hope you all enjoyed it. Now, do I recommend visiting this area? Hey Nika, so what'd you think of Montebello? This area is a terrible tourist trap. But yeah, there's still a lot of nature, but again, there's a lot more places you can go. Where do you recommend going instead?
Iceland!
So yeah, you can probably guess where hopefully the next documentary will be about, if I get enough videos from there. So in the meantime, have a good day. Bye.